So I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar this evening. My name is Peter Whiteman. I have recently stepped down as head of the Institute of Early Childhood here at Macquarie. I was head of that department for a few years, and then this year the university has merged the Institute of Early Childhood with the School of Education here to form a new department, the Department of Educational Studies, that is covering teacher education from birth right through the whole gamut to secondary school and beyond. So tonight we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at some postgraduate opportunities that we have at Macquarie to study early childhood. And after a little while, I'll do my best to answer some questions that you might have about the programs and about some opportunities here. Or if I can't do that, we certainly can point you in the right direction of where you might be able to find out some of those answers. So I think a good place to start is to think about early childhood at Macquarie and who we are. And in fact, we're older than the university itself. Our history, the Institute of Early Childhood and the institutions that it came from can be traced back to the late 19th century. So around about 1898, which is a little bit older than Macquarie's 50 years, is the first time that there was an early childhood teacher education program, generally associated with the Kindergarten Union at that time. We went through some various stages of being associated with Sydney Day Nursery Association. We became a teachers' college. We became a part of Sydney College of Advanced Education. We ended up at Macquarie, and now in our new guise, we're part of the Department of Educational Studies. Same people, same good programs. We've just got a slightly different name these days, and we're part of a bigger department. I think it's probably worthwhile to think about what we mean by early childhood and what we're actually talking about when we say early childhood teacher education. I think most people have a pretty fair idea of what they think a classroom is. And in fact, some of the early classrooms that you can see on the screen at the moment, or earlier places to learn, because you can learn outside a classroom as well, were a little different to the way that we think about classrooms these days. You often think about classrooms or learning environments that are represented on television or in movies, for example, and you'll see rows of desks, children doing what they're told with the teacher out the front, and it's actually not that real. Although you can see from those images, it was a little bit like that a fair while ago. In fact, when early childhood education first started in the Kindergarten Union centres. These days, it looks a little bit different. We've still got these images from KU, from the Kindergarten Union, or what the Kindergarten Union has become, that's KU Children's Services. You can see that a little while ago, learning looked a little bit different to learning environments that are winning architecture awards, that are being cleverly designed, that aren't just being made out of something that looks like it's secondhand, but there's a lot of thought and a lot of planning goes into what we do with children. So that, of course, has a bit of an impact on what teachers have to do and what we want teachers to do with children. I know there'll be some people attending the webinar that are already early childhood teachers, so perhaps some of this isn't exactly new to you, although maybe there might be some new ways of thinking about some things. If you're not yet an early childhood teacher, then maybe we can help you understand where early childhood is currently and where we might be headed. So what I'd like to say is that we really need better qualified teachers. We know that the better a teacher's qualification is, the more experienced they are, the better teacher they are, the better teaching that they do, so the innovative teaching practices that they employ, the things that they do to help children learn, and the type of learning environment that they do that in. These three things are absolutely crucial to ensure that we get the best outcome for children. So if we have the best qualified teachers doing the best quality teaching that they can do based on current research in the best learning environment they can do it in, everybody benefits. We have better outcomes for children, we have better outcomes for the community in general, and then over time, we have better outcomes for the country as a whole. Now, I'd like to think that that's a really good reason for making sure that we do the best that we can for children, for families, for communities, and of course for the teachers to ensure that that happens. Now, unfortunately, we can't always use only that argument to make sure that we get the best things for the children. I'm going to turn to some research that was undertaken in the mid-2000s, so around 2007, 2008. You can see from this slide that might be something that you've seen or heard about before. James Heckman was a person that said, you know what, yes, it's really noble to say that we want really good outcomes for children, but we can make a stronger case to support good early childhood teacher education and good early childhood provision for children by looking at what happens to society as a whole. If you take a moment to have a look at the graph that's on the screen, what Heckman was able to measure, and tonight's not the time to go into how he did it and what the numbers actually looked like, but what he's saying is that the earlier that you put more money into services for children, services for families, the better it is for society as a whole. Children prior to birth need resources. Children birth to 3 years old need resources, and so on. But the more that you put in the early years of someone's life, the more that you're going to get out for society as a whole later on. It's interesting that you can see that school and post-school job training is probably the least efficient use of society's money, yet unfortunately, it's the place where most of the money goes. So if we go back and say we need to do early childhood teacher education and we need to do good early childhood for children because we want good outcomes for children, that's one argument. But at the same time, I think we need to be really pragmatic about the fact that money matters in our society now. And what we have to say is the greater returns on investment in early childhood are actually worth it. That we need to invest as much money and time and effort into our teacher education and provision for children and families so that not only the children and families benefit, but everybody benefits in society. So if we think about classrooms have changed, learning environments have changed, the way that we teach has probably changed over time. We need to think about children and outcomes for children and families, but we also need to think about the greater good, social capital for the entire society. I wonder what early childhood actually looks like. I wonder how many people actually bought petrol or coffee today. How many people lined up at a cafe and said, I'd like this, here's my money, thanks very much. I wonder how many people washed their hair. I wonder, did you make toast and put some butter on it at breakfast time today? I wonder, did you use the GPS in the car to get somewhere today, or perhaps plan somewhere to go by looking at a map? What I'd put to you is that all of that is early childhood education. Children involved in every little bit of day-to-day life is where we're able to make a difference by helping children learn things that are meaningful to them, that are happening as part of everyday life with them, their families, their communities. We're not these days putting children in rows in classrooms like those early pictures that you saw. We're actually thinking about children having a little bit of agency themselves, children being at the centre of what we do, and actually thinking about teachers not being the ones that have to fill up the empty children, but work with children and families to do things better and do more things. So a little bit of a different way of thinking about early childhood programs. So what do we do in early childhood at Macquarie? Well, for postgraduate opportunities here in early childhood, we have three opportunities. We have a Master of Teaching program, which is a degree that qualifies people to work with children birth to 5 years. It's a degree for people who have an undergraduate degree in another discipline and would like to change what they do and become an early childhood teacher. I think one of the great things when I'm teaching in that program is to look at the wide range of people we have. We've had dentists, we've had doctors, we've had interior designers, artists, musicians, all sorts of people, people with business degrees, people from banks, and they all come together and share a lot of life experience and a lot of different experiences from their undergraduate education. It's a great way to learn to work with a whole bunch of diverse people and start to think very broadly about what early childhood teaching might be. Alongside that, we offer a Master of Early Childhood program. This is a program that's suitable for people who already have an early childhood background of some sort, and we'll get to the details of those in a minute. But it's pretty much for people who want to know more. It's for people who want to undertake some advanced study about early childhood education. We also have a Master of Educational Leadership that isn't a particularly early childhood program. It does have an early childhood specialisation inside it. So there are three programs that we do have at postgraduate level. It's important to remember that of those three, the Master of Teaching, the first one on the screen there at the moment, is the only one that qualifies you as an early childhood teacher. The other two are for people who are already involved in early childhood in some way, and as I said, we'll get to those, how that happens in a minute. But the Master of Early Childhood and the Master of Educational Leadership are not qualifications that will make you a teacher. So let's look at the Master of Teaching for a moment. It's a program that pretty much is based around the big circle in the middle of that diagram there. It's a program that has at its heart professional experience. So in other words, we think that being with children, practicing doing teaching, understanding what teaching is by being immersed in it is a really important part of the program. The prac parts of the program occur at various stages, and what you'll find is, as you can see in the diagram, the areas that you'll spend some time studying are around child development, because if we want to ensure that we teach children well, we have to know children well. So we have to know about children's development, about families' development, about people's development. We spend some time in some areas that I've grouped together called curriculum studies. So in other words, we have to think about what we want to teach children and how we want to teach it. The important message here, even though I said what we want to teach children, I don't mean the teacher making the decision about everything. I mean teachers that will make decisions about music, about art, about drama, about maths, science, literacy, all sorts of things that fit into that curriculum area to suit the needs of the children that they are working with. In early childhood, there is not one way of doing one thing, and you won't find a teacher doing the same thing in a different setting. You might have 3 different teachers in 3 different settings doing 3 different things, even if it's with the same age group. We also think that play is a really, really important part of how children learn. So a big part of the MTeach is about something that we call play and inquiry. We also know that the context in which children find themselves and the cultures that children co-construct with others are very, very important parts of learning. We need to understand those cultures. So I've put those units of study into that bottom part of the diagram that I've labelled children, families and communities. We also spend some time looking at leadership and management. That's leadership writ large. It's not leadership just how can I be a leader in a childcare centre, but there are all different kinds of leadership associated with early childhood. Management, of course, there are day-to-day organisational and operational things that have to occur. And of course, part of knowing children, knowing families, and knowing how to teach them is knowing about health and well-being for children. So they're the main areas that you'll cover in the Master of Teaching. It's a program that generally will last 2 years full-time if you already have a bachelor's degree. So that's a bachelor's degree in any discipline. It generally lasts 2 years full-time. You might have a bachelor degree in any discipline and perhaps a diploma in children's services as well. Or if you have a degree in primary school teaching, it will still take you 2 years because of the birth to 5 focus of the program. On the other hand, you might be able to take a little bit less time. So you might take 1.5 years, for example, if you have a bachelor's degree in early childhood studies. There are some people who have degrees that haven't qualified them to be a teacher, but they have undertaken quite a bit of early childhood study. Likewise, if you have a bachelor degree in what we generally term a relevant discipline, so that could be school teaching or early childhood studies, plus a diploma in children's services from TAFE or another registered training organisation, you might be able to finish the MTeach in 1.5 years. The important thing is that if you think you might want to apply for recognition of prior learning, so reduce the amount of time that it takes you because you've done some early childhood learning elsewhere, you need to ensure that you're able to make that case by gathering some evidence and saying, here are the courses that I've done, here's the content, here are my results, is there anything that I can already get credit for? Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work, but we'll certainly be happy to have a look at that for you. If you are an international student, we do require that you have an IELTS score of 7.5 overall. You also need a minimum of 7 in reading, 7 in writing, 8 in listening and speaking. But one thing I will mention is that really recently we've recognised that students, particularly from Singapore, who have undertaken their secondary schooling in English, are actually exempt from the IELTS requirement for postgraduate programs in early childhood. I think the only other thing I'd like to say about the MTeach, and it's possibly something I don't need to, but I am going to say that you can undertake that program full-time or part-time. And obviously, if you undertake it part-time, it takes you longer. So, on to the Master of Early Childhood. It's a slightly different beast. The Master of Early Childhood is something that is for people who already have a background in early childhood, or people who have some sort of relevant undergraduate work that they can bring to enter the program. It's very different to the MTeach because you are not qualifying as a teacher. Many people who do the Master of Early Childhood are already early childhood teachers, and they're using this degree to either learn more, to become better, to perhaps contribute to the professional learning that you need to undertake now that BOSTES, or what's soon to be the Educational Standards Authority, is accrediting birth to 5 teachers for the first time from about now. There's about 8,000 teachers that have just gone through accreditation in New South Wales. So the Master of Early Childhood is a little less structured than the MTeach. It's a little more choice. So there are 2 units of study that you have to do. You have to do an introductory unit in educational research methods, and you have to do something that's called an independent investigation. It's actually not quite as open as what it sounds. It's a little more structured. It's a systematic review of some literature, but it's guided. So it's less less driven by rules and things than, or the program is less driven by rules and the MTeach. There's a little more option, but you must do these 2 units. Once you've done these 2 units, you can do units around families. You can do units around infants and toddlers and curriculum. You can do units in creative arts, in STEM or science, technology, engineering, maths, or actually a lot of people refer to that as STEAM now because we've started to think about the need for arts to join the engineering and science units. Units in multimodality and literacies, units in early intervention or special education, units around policy, pedagogy, units around human development, around language, around organisational theory and leading and managing, and of course, advanced research in child development. Now, you don't do all of those. There are rules around certain numbers of those units that you have to take to complete the degree, but that's not for now. That's for you to look in the handbook if you decide to come and do the Master of Early Childhood. I wonder if people have really thought about why they might like to do a coursework master's degree like this. Might be to perhaps broaden your sphere of influence in the world, in your centre. It might be to lead development and implementation of programs in your workplace. It might be to evaluate educational programs. It might be to understand how teachers learn. It might actually be to understand what you can do to move into a Master of Research or doctoral program. That's not for discussion now, but the important thing is that there are many, many options for you with this degree. So you can do this in perhaps 1.5 years if you've got a bachelor's degree in what we refer to as a relevant discipline and some sort of academic or work experience in a particular area, in a relevant area. So if you had, for example, an undergraduate early childhood degree, 2 years work experience, you're in. That allows you to get into the Master of Early Childhood. There's still some English language requirements if you are an international student, an IELTS of 7 overall or equivalent, and you have to have a minimum of 7 in each band. The important thing is that there is a graduate certificate of early childhood that can allow you to get into this program if you have another degree. So if you were to contact the Department of Educational Studies or the Future Students team here at Macquarie, they would be able to guide you through, have you got the right undergraduate qualifications that would allow you into the program, and if not, what are some pathways that you could use so that you could come and join us. The other program that I mentioned earlier was the Master of Educational Leadership. I'm actually not going to spend much time talking about this because I believe that tomorrow evening there's another webinar that is specific to the Master of Educational Leadership that's being presented by 2 of my colleagues from the Department of Educational Studies. The reason that I'd like to mention the program is because even though it's a program that is a lot wider than early childhood across the department, there is an early childhood specialisation within the Master of Educational Leadership. So just as there are opportunities with a coursework masters like the Master of Early Childhood, if your interest is in becoming an educational leader, becoming a centre director, perhaps a centre manager, or taking some sort of management role within an early childhood organisation that's larger than one centre, perhaps you would like to move into advocacy work or policy making or other sorts of things that I haven't even thought of. They were the ones that I could come up with for tonight's presentation, but I'm sure there are other opportunities that an MEd leadership would open up for you. Perhaps this is the sort of program that suits you more than a coursework master's. Well, it's still a coursework master's, but more than the Master of Early Childhood. So if that's somewhere that you're thinking about moving, then perhaps you might want to consider registering for tomorrow night's webinar as well. I would like to point out though that even though I've got educational leader, centre director, centre manager, etc. in those areas of the diagram, it's not imperative that you have a Master of Educational Leadership to take on those roles. What I'm suggesting is that there are opportunities like those that the MEd leadership with an early childhood specialisation might open up for you. So I'm actually going to leave my presentation there. That was just a very short introduction to the sorts of things that we can offer you here at Macquarie in the Department of Educational Studies.